Hello everyone, this is your host Jana Harris, and I'll be your guide to the journey into the fungi kingdom with the Fungi Finders on Ipswich Community Access Media. And I would like to introduce myself. I am one of the members of the Boston Mycological Club, and I also run mushroom walks, guided mushroom walks on the North Shore, and also run the lectures for the local organizations. And today I would like to show you my journey into the fungi kingdom. So I started my journey a long time ago when I was probably 7 or 8 years old, back in Czechoslovakia. I was born there, and I started looking for mushrooms with my mom and my aunt, and I really enjoyed the time. And then for many years, I forgot about that, kind of a pastime. And later, when I moved into New England in 2016, I started to look for mushrooms again with our son that you can see on our pictures, with the morel mushroom, with some of my crazy friends that you can see in the pictures as well. And then also with the club, the Boston Mycological Club, where I learned a lot about mushrooms from a great variety of people, and it was lots of fun. And I want to tell you about the times when we went mushroom hunting, and also about the lectures that we did. So this is more info about me. I was born in Czechoslovakia when the Czechoslovakia was still a thing. And as I said, I used to go mushroom hunting. Mushroom hunting in Europe is really a national sport. Everyone in Central Europe, they go out with the family or friends, and people in Poland, Czech Republic, Italy, even in England, Britain, or France, they all go together and they look for mushrooms that they like. I personally found out that usually they look for just one or two types of mushrooms that they enjoy, and they leave the rest to be to other people that might like them, but they will not collect a big variety of mushrooms. That's my experience. Anyway, later I moved to the East Coast of Massachusetts, and right now I live here with my husband and 2 kids, and we have a cat. And later on, I joined the Boston Mycological Club in 2016 with a few of my friends. And I bought lots of books, and I read many, many books about mushrooms and fungi and lichens and other things. And later, during the COVID, I decided to volunteer for the Boston Mycological Club, help out with the website, or I should say Facebook site, since our website was not working at the time. And I also joined the Rhode Island Mycological Society. So if any of you are watching this from Rhode Island, or you have a friends or family that live there, feel free to look up the Rhode Island Mycological Society that they do walks in their area, and you can join them and learn lots about the mushrooms as well. So after the time that the COVID was not giving us any restrictions, I attended many walks and online lectures, and I decided to study for a wild mushroom food safety certification, which I got in November of 2021, I think. And later, after some problems finding a job, I decided I'm going to do this as a part-time job. I'm going to go out and teach other people about the mushrooms, about how to ID them, how to look for them, not to be scared of them, afraid of mushrooms, because you shouldn't be. You or your kids, you should not be afraid of the mushrooms, and I hope I can teach you that in this segment or many other segments, hopefully. And later on, after I founded Essex Forays, I started to work with local organizations and the schools, the Greenbelt, Essex Heritage. We did some walks to the Misery Island, which is a great location many people might not think of when they talk about mushrooms. But there are mushrooms on the Misery Island and some special lichens. Also, I work with the Newburyport Adult Education, doing walks and lectures for them. And here in Ipswich and around Massachusetts, everywhere, I did lots of walks and events for the trustees. And I'll be doing more of those later this year. I would like to talk about the Boston Mycological Club. As I said, I'm one of the members and also admins for their Instagram and for their Facebook sites that we have. The Boston Mycological Club is actually the oldest continuously existing amateur mycological club in the world. We were founded in 1895. There were some other clubs that were founded, but later they turned into the professional mycological societies, or they stopped their workings. They were kind of shut down, or maybe they paused their work. And so the Boston Mycological Club is a great club for people that want to learn about the mushrooms. We do walks, forays, we organize lectures, we have social events like a Christmas dove sale and potluck. We do lots of educational work now, and also we started to do a kids walks for little kids that want to learn about the mushrooms. They come with their parents. And our walks start usually at the end of June. That's when the main high seasons for the mushroom is happening in New England. And the walks run till late October. Every weekend, every Sunday, we meet in some different place as a group. We go out for a walk. We collect mushrooms that we see on a walk. Then we bring them to the big ID table where we lay out lots of mushrooms and we ID them, or some experts that we have in the club. They talk about the mushrooms that we found. And it's very easy to join. A membership for a single person is $20 for a year, and for a family, it's $25. We also have a student discount. And in the off season, if you feel like you can only go and look for mushrooms or learn about them during the summer, it's not completely true, obviously. You can watch lots of our lectures on the Zoom, especially during the COVID. We would have lots of Zoom lectures every week. Right now, it's every other week on the Thursday night at 7 p.m. You will get a link to the Zoom lecture, and if you missed the lecture, you can always watch the recording. Once you join, you can also watch the archive of the lectures that we did in the past. So you can learn about lots of stuff in regards to the mushroom and fungi kingdom. Some lectures are about painting the mushrooms. Some will be about using mushrooms to dye the fabrics or the yarn for, that people are interested in maybe. Obviously, we have lectures about different types of mushrooms, how to cook mushrooms, also about the history of use of mushrooms in different cultures, and many other topics that you would not think of, I would say. Here are some pictures of what happens on our walks or on our events with the Boston Mycological Club. There are some mushrooms that we found in the basket. All of those are great edibles that you see on the top. One of them is called shrimp of the woods. The other one is called honey mushroom. You might have heard about them or not. The shrimp of the woods actually does taste like a shrimp when you cook it. It's a great edible. And I found many of those last few years in the area of Ipswich or Beverly or Hamilton, Wenham. You can also see some cookies made of mushrooms. The mushrooms that you used for that one were candy caps. So they're mushrooms that are very small. I don't think you can find them on the East Coast, but they're available on the West Coast, or you can find them, forage them on the West Coast. And they have a flavor, or they have a taste of a maple syrup. They also smell like a maple syrup, so they're great for the cookies, I would say. Kids love them. And in the middle, you will see a picture of the ID table that we have. It was one of our walks. As you see, the mushrooms are all laid out on a table, and we ID them and we talk about them. So that's kind of an example of what you would see on a walk. And there are also some poisonous, deadly, toxic mushrooms in this slideshow, but you should not be scared of them. Any mushrooms, even the dangerous ones, can be touched safely, and we'll talk about that maybe later in one of our other segments. And on the platter, on the right side, on bottom, you will see morels, which are delicious edibles. And here on the east coast of Massachusetts, you can find them out in the western Massachusetts, or if you're lucky, you might be able to find them in your mulch. But I will talk about those later again. So as you can see, some people might think that the mushrooms are only able to find only in the woods as a forage mushrooms, but you can also garden with the mushrooms. You can include them in your garden, either for soil or plant health, or you can use them as, or you can get them as a harvest when you actually inoculate the areas of your garden with some mushrooms, or you have a special dedicated area in your house where you can grow your mushrooms from a kit. So we can talk about gardening with the mushrooms, with your kids, with your family. The boy in the pictures is holding wine caps. Those are the mushrooms that are very easily added to your garden, and you can harvest them pretty quickly. And also some other people add mushrooms called shiitake to their yards. They can grow on the logs, which you can see in some of the pictures. And then if you add the mycelium or mycorrhiza to your gardens, you might see that your plants are going to be growing bigger and better, which are some other examples of use of the mushrooms. And here comes my favorite part, foraging for mushrooms. These are all mushrooms that have been found in a wider Massachusetts, wider Boston area, I would say. They're all great edibles. They come in many, many colors. And we are seeing here in the middle picture with the basket of the chicken of the woods. If any of you know that one, then there's also a cauliflower mushroom, shrimp of the woods mushroom, and other baskets have some other great edibles from a fall season, like the one on the left where it has some bluets, which are great edibles. They do have a poisonous lookalike, so I don't recommend them to any beginners. And also, we have here some fall mushrooms on the right side, which some of you may spot, the hen of the woods or wild wine caps and some bolete mushrooms. So these are just some great examples, and I hope I'll be able to talk to them about you later on. This is some of the word of advice that I always give to any new foragers or any people that maybe have been transplanted from different countries, different continents, and they come to New England and they want to look for wild mushrooms, but they're not sure what to do. So the very first rule, they leave the UFOs, as we call them, but those are called unidentified fungal objects. Leave those to the experts, the ones that you don't know for sure. So only collect for eating the mushrooms that you are 100% sure that you know them, or someone who's an actual person and an expert has ID'd those mushrooms for you. I would not rely ever on the Mushroom ID app as the sole source of the identification for the mushroom. You will learn much more from experts, from people from the Boston Mycological Club or from other groups that you might find locally. If you talk to them, if you look into the books, don't be scared. Take pictures of the mushrooms. You can collect them. Even any deadly poisonous or toxic mushroom can be touched safely as long as you don't ingest any tissue. But please don't go out into the yard or anywhere else and collect a mushroom and without knowing what you have, taking it home and trying to cook it. That would be a very bad idea. So always double and triple check what you found and what you might want to consume in the future. And if you want to eat the mushroom for the first time, it's always a great idea just to try to cook up a little bit of it. Store the rest in the fridge. If you store the mushrooms in an open bowl or open paper bag, don't close the bag, then you will be able to later come back to them and they'll be still fine. They last usually at least 4 or 5 days in the fridge, fresh. So just cook up a little bit of the mushrooms that you're trying, especially if you're trying it for the first time. Taste it and see how you handle the mushroom. Sometimes, or not sometimes, lots of times people get poisoned or they don't feel well after eating mushrooms because the mushrooms were not cooked enough. Or maybe their body just has kind of a natural allergic reaction to it like you have to some other foods. So lots of times people think that they ate poisonous mushrooms or the mushrooms were not good just because the mushrooms were not cooked enough. So I would take it easy. Don't feed everyone in the family with the mushrooms. Maybe everyone can just try a little tiny piece. Don't make a big dish for your neighborhood potluck, I would say. Just test it out and see what happens. And then if you feel fine after cooking mushrooms for a while, and cooking mushrooms for a while means cooking them at the high temperature, roasting, baking, or having them in the pan at the high temperature for at least 20 minutes. You cannot overcook mushrooms. The mushroom flavor just comes out more the longer you cook them. So don't be afraid. You're not going to overcook your mushrooms that you find that you know are edible. And so try it out and see how you feel. And if you're fine, then a couple days later, you can go and try to cook up the rest of it. Okay, here are some more local edible mushrooms that we found in the past years in the area. We have some bolete mushrooms, which is the one on the left. Those are the mushrooms, kind of classic ones that you might see in the books, I would say. They have a sponge texture on the bottom, and we'll talk about that later. There's a huge honey mushroom in the middle of the pictures that our son is holding, and also a mushroom called late fall oyster or winter oyster That's the one on the right, kind of has a greenish color to it, and that one grows on the wood. And oysters are one of the mushrooms that we'll talk about later in one of the segments, hopefully. They grow year-round, so you can find them even when it's cold outside. They actually like the burst of cold, and then they come out after the period of cold in the fall. So these are great late fall, like late October, even November mushrooms that you might spot in some areas in the woods. Okay, these are some of the people, organizations that I work with, and I still work, well, I worked with them in the past, and I also work with them now and hopefully in the future, like the Greenbelt organization, Ipswich Public Library hosts walks. We'll have 2 walks this upcoming season. Those are all free. You just have to register with the library and you can come on a walk. Also, the Lexington Community Education will have some online lectures that you can join. Peabody Garden Club had me do a lecture for their members. So if any of you are members of the Garden Club, feel free to reach out to me and I can come and do a little talk for your members. And Beverly Public Library, since I live in Beverly, I'll be doing some walks for the Beverly Public Library this fall. Oh, no, this summer, yes. And those are scheduled. Also, Essex National Heritage Area has great events for local people, and that's the one that I did the Misery Island Walk for, and that's happening again on July 14. And the trustees, of course, there's some mushroom walks that we did in Crane Beach Dunes and also in the Long Hill and Beverly, and also some areas down south on some of their properties. Okay, I want to talk about what are fungi. If someone thinks about fungi or mushrooms, which is not the same thing, they only sometimes think about these large groups of eukaryotic organisms. These all include the molds, yeast, mildews, rust, smuts, and mushrooms. Mushrooms are only a small part of this huge, wide kingdom called fungi. Mushrooms are considered a fruiting body of the mycelium, but fungi play a huge role in many areas of human lives. Let's say in the baking industry, all of you know you need to use yeast when you bake, right? Then we have in the brewing industry where also yeast is used. In the medicinal industry or in a hospital, right, settings, obviously you have medicine like penicillin and other things that are used for medicine, which are part of the fungi group as well. In farm industry, lots of farmers and people that grow a crop use lots of mycelium or mycorrhiza, which is part of the fungi family. They use them to boost their fertilizer, or instead of the fertilizer, they will use the mycelium, the mycorrhiza, to support the growth of the plants. Another way that obviously the mushrooms or the fungi play a role is in the diet of humans, right? People have been eating mushrooms for a long time. So you're familiar with that part. And also the medicinal value of some mushrooms is well known. For thousands of years now, humans have been using mushrooms for different types of, I would say, illnesses or sicknesses, right? Or maybe use them as a help. If you get a cut or wound, you can apply some of the mushrooms to your skin and probably help it heal better or faster. There will be a special segment on medicinal mushrooms in the future, I hope so. And so the mushrooms produce spores and are unable to photosynthesize. Fungi are not plants, as lots of humans thought, or lots of scientists thought for long. Later, they found out they're in fact more related to humans and animals than they are to the plants. And as you can see in some pictures, we have a wild pitch yeast on the picture, the bread mold, everyone is familiar with probably, on your bread or your buns that you have at home. And the last one, the classic Mario mushroom that everyone knows. It's actually called by its common name, fly agaric mushroom. And the scientific name of it is Amanita muscaria. We on the East Coast usually do not have the red variety. The ones that you see in our woods or in your backyard would be yellow or orange color. In our next part, I would like to talk about the timeline of the fungi kingdom on planet Earth, just to show you that mushrooms and fungi and mycelium have been here on planet Earth for a very long time, and I think they have been waiting for a long time for the people to catch up on what everything they do and how they contribute to the eco-environment that we have on planet Earth. So the oldest mycelium structure was actually just discovered in January of 2021. I believe it was in the Democratic Republic of Congo where they found it. And that one is believed to be between 810 million years old and 750 million years old. And this oldest mycelium that you see on the picture, all the way on the left, was found in the area kind of between the water and the dry land. So this was in a time when the life on the planet Earth was not completely has not completely taken over dry land yet. It was just the beginning. And the plants that were growing at that time on the earth, on the dry land, did not have roots like we know them right now. They were quite short and they needed some support system to be able to get all their nutrition from the soil. They could not do that by themselves. Yes, they can photosynthesize and they can get the sugars from the sun, but they needed extra help to get the nutrition, the phosphorus and nitrogen, all from the soil. And this is where the mycelium steps in and they kind of form this relationship where both sides have some advantages to working with the other side. So the mycelium helped the plants to gain more lignin, which is the part that makes the plant strong, and it's able, then later on they're able to grow taller and get bigger leaves and flowers and bigger fruit. So that's where the mycelium came in. Later on, there was a discovery of the first terrestrial fungi, which is around 645 million years old. I think this one was found in China, this particular one on the picture. And it's called Tortotubus protuberans, and this one was on the actual dry land, the first terrestrial fungi. Much later on, the first animals appeared on the land, and around 420 million years ago and 330 million years ago, there were these huge mushrooms, as some people call them. They did not have a cap like the mushrooms that we know now, and they were very, very tall. For the longest time, scientists thought that they were actually leftovers from the conifer trees, from the trunks. When they found them now, they thought they found remains of the old trees, old trunks. But a few years ago, after much research, it was proven that the things that they found, called prototaxites, were actually a mix of algae and mycelium, and the structure that they had were kind of like a rolled up carpet. It wasn't solid, it was very tall, probably around 3 feet wide and around 20 feet tall. So it did look like a huge tree if someone would find it, but it wasn't. It was actual mycelium structure, or mushroom structure, I should say. Much later, as you can see, dinosaurs and then the humans appeared on the earth. So mycelium has been here for a very, very long time, and it has been helping lots of plants and even humans in their life journey. I do want to talk about the life cycle of a mushroom when we talk about the mushrooms. For those of you that are new or fairly new to the mushroom kingdom, the fungi kingdom, mushrooms, as we talked about, are considered a fruiting body of the mycelium. So the mycelium are the roots that you see on the pictures, and the mushroom above the ground is the fruiting body. That's also how they reproduce. The mature mushroom will drop spores on the ground, those little white, those little tiny dots as seeds. They land on the surface and they wait. They will be waiting for food and also the right moisture or the right conditions when there's enough moisture for them. If they don't have that, they can just sit there for a very long time, and they can survive many kind of harsh conditions. When it's too cold or too hot for other seeds and plants to grow, they will just sit there, the spores from the mushrooms. They're very small. They will just sit and wait until they have a food and the moisture, and when they have those conditions, they will start slowly sprouting and growing into the hyphae. Some mushrooms do need a sexual partner to reproduce. And that's how they do it. But some mushrooms do not do that. They can just grow on their own. And when we have the network of the mycelium, it's called hyphae, and when it spreads wide enough and big enough, then under the ground it feeds and grows in the soil, and later young mushroom forms, and then the cycle starts over again. As I said, some mushrooms do need a sexual partner, and some of the life cycles of other mushrooms are much more complicated than this one. This is kind of a basic one that you will see in nature. For example, morel mushrooms have a much more complicated life cycle. They have this period of hibernation. They need a certain amount of days in cold temperatures, and only then they can actually grow to the full-grown fruiting body. But that's for another time, and we can maybe talk about that later. Another very important thing, if you want to go look for mushrooms, or if you're even looking for at any mushrooms that you have in your yard or you see them on a walk, is the anatomy of a mushroom, because this is also the thing that you will find in some of the, and in all of the guidebooks, and I'll recommend some of these later, but all this information that I will talk about will be in the field guides that you can find in the library if you want to borrow one, or you can buy one online, obviously. And so let's look at the anatomy of a mushroom. This is kind of an example of a mix of what mushroom can have on it. There's no mushroom that looks like this, but it gives us a great picture. It's actually from one of the very famous and well-known mycologists, Gary Linkoff, that passed away recently. And this is from one of his books. It's a great example. That's why I picked it. You can see that obviously the mushroom has a cap. Some of them will have a stem or stipe. Some of them don't. Some of them are directly attached to the ground, or maybe to a wood they're growing from, or whatever they're growing from. So some caps can be soft on the cover. The top can be soft. They can have a velvety structure. They can have little warts on them. They can be a zoning pattern, which kind of goes in the circles, as you see on the picture. At the top, they can have a striation, which will be on the edge of the cap. It looks like a little ridges. So that's the top of the cap. All this information, as I said, will be always in your field guide. Field guides have lots of pictures and very detailed description with each mushroom. It tells you where the mushroom grows, when does it grow, what's the size of the mushroom, what's the color, what it feels like, if there's any special odor. All this very detailed information is in all field guides to help you ID the mushrooms. If you're doing it with the book, right? If you're trying to ID the mushroom with the book, you can always talk to someone, as I said, and you will learn a lot just by reading all the field guides that you have. The other important part when you're looking at the mushroom is always look at the underside when you flip the mushroom over. What is on the underside, because some mushrooms may look the same from the top when you look at them from far away, but then when you turn them over, you will see that they're quite different. One of them can have gills, which are the 10 blades that most of you probably know from portobello mushroom, the classic mushroom from the store. Some mushrooms might have circular pores at the bottom. They kind of look like a sponge. They're actually long tubes, all stuffed with the spores, and when the mushroom is mature, the spores get released. There's another group of mushrooms that on the other side, they have a thing called teeth or spines, and they look like little spines that you have on a hedgehog. There's a great edible mushroom, my favorite one, called hedgehog, that has these spines. It's very easy to ID once you know what to look for. So that's another thing that the mushrooms can have on the underside. And then they can also be, some certain polypores have no really structure to the underside. But once you look at the mushrooms closely, you will realize that there are differences between them, obviously. Another very important part when you're eyeing mushroom is a stem or a stipe, because stem can have either texture on it. They can be The stipe can be soft. It can have a striation on it. It can have something called reticulation, which kind of looks like a fishnets. That's what I call it. It looks like a fishnet thrown on a stipe of the stem of a mushroom. And these fishnets can come in many colors. Some will be brown, some will be white. And that is another feature that you will find in your field guide, the color of the reticulation on each mushroom or different types of mushrooms. And this will help you ID mushroom again. It's kind of a small thing, but you'll be surprised. Just by looking at some reticulation, you can tell right away, is this a good mushroom? Good. Is it edible, or is it going to taste bad if I try it? We can talk about that later in one of the other segments again. Another part, when you're eating mushroom, that is very important, is the very bottom of the mushroom, where you would have the root kind of go into the ground. That's why it's very important when you are looking at the mushrooms, and especially when you're learning them, trying to learn about them as much as possible, to always collect the whole mushroom. Don't just chop up the top of the mushroom, right? Take the whole mushroom home, maybe dig it out a little bit from under the ground, and just take the whole mushroom home, and then you can look at the base. Because lots of mushrooms have a special type of a base. Like this one in the picture has something called vulva or bulb at the bottom, and that is actually remnant from the stage when the mushroom was really small and it was still a little baby mushroom in an egg. Because some mushrooms do start growing as a little egg, and when they grow, the egg bursts open and the whole mushroom comes out. So that's why it's important to collect the whole mushroom to see what you really have. Essex Forays is me, and I'm the person who will be leading you through the Fungi Finders, if you will be watching next episodes, hopefully. I do solo and group walks for the organizations, and I'll be your guide in the next episodes. But before we leave today, I do want to recommend some mushroom field guides for the local people. Always get the book for the area where you live, right? Having a book for West Coast is not going to help you identify the mushrooms on the East Coast. So I highly recommend this first one for beginners. It's very small. You can put it in a pocket. It's called A Simple Guide to Common Mushrooms, Mushrooms of the Northeast by Teresa Marone and Walt Sturgeon. It's a great little book. I believe it's like $10. And it has lots of pictures. Most of the field guides have the poisonous, toxic, and deadly mushrooms in the front. So they're well known, they're marked. Then also edible mushrooms are in the front. This one came out in many prints, I think, from year 2016. So there might be a newer one out, but this is a great little book. And the other one that we have is called The Mushrooms of the Northeastern United States and Eastern Canada. It's written by Timothy Baroni, and I know they have a brand new printout available. And that one is for people that realize that the first book is too small and that you should have something that has many, many more other mushrooms that you might not found in the first book. So this is the first part of the Fungi Finders, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, feel free to let us know. And also feel free to reach out. We'll be doing more segments, and also we might be having ID feature when you can send us your pictures if you find anything in the woods, on your walk, at home, anywhere, in your flower pots at home. So you can feel free to email us and we'll try to ID the mushrooms for you. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.